Hello, consumers of the world. Let's start in the United States of America with oil prices and the US economy, and the chart, which is the average retail price for regular gas. We know the music here. It's going up again. That we know. So let's read. Here's why I believe that the current high price of oil is not enough to derail the US economic recovery. After the chart we read, although the price of oil and gasoline have risen significantly from their values in October, they are still not back to the levels we saw last spring or the summer of 2008. There is a good deal of statistical evidence, for example, blip, 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 that an oil price increase that does no more than reverse an earlier decline has much more limited effect on the economy than if the price of oil surges to a new all-time high. Psychology of the peoples is. It's all in your head. Number 2, we have combined NYMEX and iced light sweet crude oil, managed money ratio of long-short positions. These are the speculators on oil. And here we have a 12-to-1 long ratio for managed money. What does this mean? It's best that you follow the link and read the article, but I'll give you this. As a reminder, there are 4 reporting classifications: producers, swap dealers, managed money, and other reportables. Thus, if managed money, which combines both speculative and passive positions, is nearly 12-to-1 long, always note this for this long-short stuff, some of the respective others must be somewhat short. And if you read the article, you find basically the managed money is hedge funds. They are long oil, betting that the price will at least stay up, go up even more. And the short position is taken by the swap dealers, who are basically the banks. This is a great in-the-head battle between the hedgies and the banks. Number 3, Washington Post wonk blog Ezra Klein runs it. This is not written by him, but it's a good little article. Are speculators to blame for soaring gas prices? ? And I've just pulled out one paragraph, but I can recommend it as an easy read article about whether they are or whether they aren't the speculators to blame. In essence, says energy analyst Stephen Schrock, a lot of oil speculation works like insurance. Countries and companies that need oil are willing to pay a risk premium now in order to ensure that they'll have oil at a reasonable price in the future, even if shortages erupt. Schrock adds that oil speculators are typically piggybacking on fundamentals, like the fact that global supplies are tight. Global oil supplies are tight. By contrast, in the natural gas market, speculators are actually pushing prices down to decade-level lows. That's because the fundamentals in that market are the polar opposite, Schrock says. So it looks like the speculators just magnify direction of natural price inclination. But it's worth reading the extra paragraphs in that article. Wall Street Journal, number 4, Journal. China's foothold in US energy, where we read, since 2010, Chinese companies have invested more than $17 billion into oil and gas deals in the US and Canada, according to data provider Deal Logic, giving their energy-thirsty nation a long-coveted foothold in a region known for innovative new drilling techniques. North America has become China's top region for oil and gas deals. Mr. Fu has been leading the push, first as chairman of China National Offshore Oil Corp, known as CNOOC, then as chairman of China Petrochemical Corp, called Sinopec, one of the largest oil companies in the world. The recent deals are nothing like Mr. Fu's audacious, unsuccessful bid for Unocal Corp in 2005. They typically involve a Chinese firm paying up front for a stake in an oil or gas field and agreeing to cover some of the drilling costs. CNOOC executives figured such joint ventures might be a non-threatening way to get back into America, says Audrey McClendon, chief executive of Chesapeake, who struck a 2010 deal with Mr. Fu that marked the beginning of Chinese investment surge. They're after oil, but they're after brains. That's really what they're paying for. They're getting their finger on the pulse of the cutting edge of the oil market. The cutting edge of the drill bit. The Telegraph in the United Kingdom. Plateau Oil meets 125 million Chinese cars. And this could be a good hint for us. Peak oil seems to be a soundbite too far. There is a possibility that the mainstream media might edge towards it with that little plateau oil. It might be that might take hold. Oil spikes usually metasize once energy costs reach 9% of global GDP. The longer they stay there, the greater the damage. And I think they're about there now. Haven't checked, but I think they're about there now at 9% of global GDP. Right. A little take from this article, Ambrose Evans Pritchard. The IEA, bless them, warned in its annual report that energy demand will rise 40% by 2035. 2035 is so far off, nobody bothers about it. And then says the world must invest $1.5 trillion just to avoid a lethal crunch. That isn't a US government type of $1.5 trillion. That's a real find the money and invest it in oil exploration $1.5 trillion. That's an awful lot of real dollars. Even then, prices are likely to rise viciously unless nuclear power and renewable family of hydro, wind and solar can come to the rescue. Fukushima has killed nuclear expansion in Japan, Germany and beyond. The green drive has faltered. Oddly vilified in this country, that's the United Kingdom, by conservatives, that's the government in place at the moment, who should be its natural defenders. Yes, the shale gas revolution has revived America's fortunes. The US may overtake Russia to become the biggest producer of hydrocarbon fuels in the world within 8 years, according to PFC Energy. It's Russia at the moment that has been, and has been for most of the last 10 years, the biggest producer of oil. But note in this it says hydrocarbon fuels. So a lot of coal will be in there as well, and gas. But the US is, if not sitting pretty, it's holding a reasonable hand compared to the rest of the world. Staying in the UK, last year Kirk Dorius and I travelled to London to participate in the kick-off of the Weinberg Foundation, an advocacy group for thorium energy, and I'm pleased to announce with them the formation of an all-party parliamentary group that contains members of both the House of Commons and the House of Lords to consider the potential of thorium as an energy source. This is a press release from the Weinberg Foundation that was issued today. Press contact details are included below if you follow the link. Personally, I'm not convinced on this thorium thing. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who wrote the last Telegraph article, thinks it's quite a whizzy go. I am not convinced, but that doesn't mean much. The Do the Math blog gives us this list to past articles he has written on this subject. To recapitulate, the principal challenges we face in confronting our transition from fossil fuels while living on a finite planet are, with links to earlier posts in blue, the growth paradigm must end. Now this is the meta concept, the really big one at the top, that really should be discussed at G everything and IMF everything, World Bank everything, and everything. The growth paradigm must end. I don't know of any of these supranational bodies that are discussing it at all. Conventional oil production will soon begin terminal decline, and at the bottom, alternatives do not stack up to the practical. Fossil fuels will not simply migrate to new sources without discomfort, and it's not that it just won't be without discomfort moving to alternatives. Those alternatives just aren't there at the moment. Let's run down some more. Transportation is hard. Transportation is very hard because oil's so perfect for distilling into go juice for transportation. The energy trap extracts a toll on the late realization that we really should take energy resources shortages seriously. And I think they're starting to have an idea that it should be taken seriously again. But I think their minds always bump into Jimmy Carter and go, look what happened to him when he took it seriously. Complexity can't be ignored. It's a tricky subject, complexity, but the more you look into the more shocking it is. And at the bottom, many people point to the global population boom as the fundamental problem that must be addressed. I have not covered this directly in Do the Math, except in the context of evaluating exactly what sustainability means. I see the population explosion as a predictable reflection of surplus energy, which revolutionized agriculture and promoted more mouths in the world. On the flip side, energy scarcity translates to ugly population pressures via reduced food production and possibly hoarding. Forget the possibly hoarding and go to the possibility of starvation. United Nations FAO Food Price Index. 2008, we know that was the great spike that could well have sparked the Arab Spring and other uprisings in the world. The clinical yellow line across there in 2008, you can just look above all of those yellows, 2008 to the 2007, and see what a horrendous spike it was. It was a real spike to the psychology of the world's people. Food price index 159 up to 200, that was overall. So meat, let's have a comparison between then and now. Meat was 153 and now it's 179. Dairy, it was 220 and it's a bit lower at 207. Cereals 238, a bit lower at 223 now. Oils and fats was 227, slightly more at 234. Sugar's a lot more expensive now, 182 then, 334 now, giving us an overall food price index then of 200 and 214 now. It's not that great psychological shock that it was in 2008. And finally, 8B, this is the same in chart form. You can see it was along the bottom at 90 for the years 99, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3 we started taking off, and before we knew it in 2008 it had doubled to 180. It's been down, and now it's been back well up again. It had a good year last year, but this year has started getting more expensive again. This might not be a psychological shock to the people of the world, but there are many people in the world that the psychological shock won't be as important as the fact that they just plain will not be able to afford it. It will be a rumble in the tummy shock. That might strangely not lead to riots, just starving people. Bye.